Hello, everyone. I am so delighted to have Gina Mundy join us on Envision Together, going to our next level of best today. She has a unique topic to share. I haven't run across this topic in my time of interviewing these last 2.5, 3 years. And I think we're going to learn a lot, but we're also going to engage in a fun conversation. It's a serious topic, but it's one we all need to know more about. I certainly enjoyed learning a bit with our previous conversation, but now we're going to dig in much deeper, and I'm ready to hear. So, with that, welcome so much, Gina. Will you tell us a little more about yourself?
Oh, sure. And Pamela, thank you for having me on today. I've listened to a bunch of your podcasts and stuff, and you are awesome. And thank you for doing what you do and, giving people like me a platform to talk. So I appreciate it. So I'm from Michigan, and I have been an attorney for over 20 years, specializing in childbirth cases. So many people don't really know what that means, so I'll explain it a little bit more.
Please do.
Yeah, so basically, during the birth of a child, something goes wrong, whether it's a mistake or a complication, and the result is baby is not born healthy. In some cases, unfortunately, baby passes away before childbirth or may pass away after childbirth. And then I've had some very, very sad cases where mom has passed away during childbirth. So my job as the attorney is to come in and find out what went wrong and why. And the most important question that I have to, find an answer to is, what could have been done or what different decisions could have been made so baby would have been born healthy or mom would have been around to be able to raise her baby. And those
Now
questions,
you're the attorney for the hospital side.
that's correct. So it's a mistake or a complication occurs. And again, and this is different than, naturally, sometimes childbirth doesn't turn out like it should with the healthy baby. And these cases they involve mistakes and complications. The families then bring a lawsuit against the hospital and the delivery team. And then I am the attorney for the hospital and the delivery team.
Okay.
So there goes my, that's how I get into the process. I review the records and then whatnot. And then for the last 20 years, then I travel across the United States, meeting with different, doctors, nurses, midwives, basically hashing out every aspect of labor and delivery and all of these, different decisions that are made. So there's a little bit more to it. It is in a litigation setting, so obviously there's extensive cross-examinations of witnesses and all that fun stuff that keeps me sharp, because you got to know a lot to to be cross-examining OBGYNs on a regular basis. So anyway, so what I've done is I've taken that knowledge of my experience with childbirth. Keep in mind now, I am an attorney. I have no medical training at all, but I know, my life has been, professionally, all of these mistakes and complications that occur. So I took that knowledge that I've gained from the past 20 years, and that's why I wrote my book, A Parent's Guide to a Safer Childbirth. And the purpose of writing that book is to help parents make sure that these complications and mistakes do not happen during the birth of their children. Because when it does, it is absolutely devastating. So instead of getting involved after a mistake has been made during childbirth, my goal now is to get involved before childbirth in hopes that we can prevent the mistakes and complications.
Wonderful. Now, wow. So through the, I guess, 9 to 5 job you had or have, you just learned some things and things came across your path where you said, I can do something more about this to help people. And now you've written this book and you're spreading the word, helping us know, because I didn't know some of the things that you told me about briefly, but I'm eager to have us share more of those details with my audience. But before we get there, tell me, I mean, a little bit more about who you are. What have, what are some of the things you've experienced in life that would cause you to be so passionate now to be an advocate for others? It's usually we find our call, so to speak, because of something in our own lives that we can relate to, and it sends us on this hero's journey, so to speak. Can you tell us a little bit about things you've experienced that would maybe cause the advocate to rise up in you in this way? Because you were advocating before, but from a different vantage point. This is a different way that you're advocating.
Correct. And that event that you're referring to, the life-changing event, happened in March 2021. And my niece was pregnant, and she's actually the introduction to the book, her story. So I know I hate to spill the beans, but
Yeah, don't spoil too much, but just
well, I don't know if I can finish the podcast without telling what happened, because it is a very scary story, and obviously it's involving childbirth. She was ready to deliver the first baby of our next generation of our family. We have a very close family. And basically, there were things that had happened. I was 1,100 miles away that day, so I couldn't get to the hospital, which ends up being important kind of in the process of figuring out I needed to write a book. But basically, I got a phone call from my sister. Well, that day I'd gotten many, many phone calls, as you will see in the introduction. But I got the one where she was hysterically screaming. And she's just yelling, "The baby crashed, the baby crashed." I can barely say those words without squeaking, the crack in my voice. I'll never forget that moment. The rest of my life, my kids were around me. We thought we were getting news that Sam had her baby, and it wasn't. So I ran outside so my family could not hear her screaming. And geez, I did not realize it would get this emotional. I wrote this is all in the book. So I sat out there, and I just listened to her cry, and we didn't know if the baby was going to be okay. And it was like, I went from like this legal analysis to this human analysis. And I was like, this is how the families feel. This is where it starts. And I had like this emotional connection to all of these families I've encountered over the last 20 years. And I was like, you feel helpless and you're scared. And you know that no decision now is going to change the past. All you can do is hope and pray at that moment. And that's what we did. I prayed, she cried, and then it seemed like forever, but it was probably about 20 minutes later, we got news that the baby was in fact going to be okay. But there was that point where I'm like, oh my goodness, I have kids, I have girls, they're 19 and 15, and I have a son who's 9, my little 4th grader. But all of a sudden, this realization that I may not be around for the birth of my grandkids, and it's not that I may be gone. It might be maybe I'm 1,100 miles away from my kids that day. And I can tell you how I will prep my children for childbirth is much different than how families probably ordinarily or typically prepare for childbirth, because what I've seen and what I've been through for the last, 20 something years. So that was the event and the emotional connection in my kids. And I'm like, I just have to start writing.
Wow.
This is probably too much information, but within 2 weeks, I knew I had to write a book. And ironically, I busted my hand on a treadmill, and all I could do basically was walk. I couldn't do anything because they said, if you move, you can, or if you don't move your hand for 6 weeks, we can try to avoid surgery. Okay. And it's my right hand, mind you not. But I'm an attorney and I dictate. So I was able for those 6 weeks to dictate a large part of that book, because really all I could do was take walks and dictate. So I did. And I had to do something. I'm like, something really good has to come. I'm like, I'm debilitated here. We got to do something. I'm not just going to sit and do nothing and just be in shock and feel sorry for myself. So again, probably too much information, but that really was a kickstart. And once I went from attorney to author,
I
with the
see.
intention on helping prevent these mistakes. I mean, there was so much information I didn't realize that was in my brain that can help people. So it was just, there's more to know than I could have ever imagined.
Wow. I love that. And it even confirms all the more why I would want you to be on our show because you learned something through your life's experiences, even though you were engaged with this, um, I guess, process as from a lawyer point of view, you had a even greater epiphany when it really, really touched home. And now you just have like a plethora of information to share from both sides of it. And now you want to share that with others. You want to make sure not just your family has this protection, but and or this understanding, but that many people will know. And that's the premise of my show, helping others go to their next level of best, as we do so ourselves. So thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable. And um, I mean, you cried and you didn't plan on it, but I think that candid response again just shows, I mean, we're all human, and it's good that we're touched by uh, situations like that. I mean, I would think it's strange if you weren't touched by it. Um, so again, thank you for being so transparent. So, what has helped you in your own life to overcome the challenge that you mentioned earlier? What's something that when you learned that about your niece, how did you help her? How did you help yourself get through that window? We know that you found out that the baby was going to be fine, but were there elements that still needed to be healed from that experience, or?
That's a great question. And yes, so apparently, after 20 years of seeing what I've seen, and apparently I needed therapy and I didn't realize it. So
Hmm,
writing my book was probably the best therapy
okay.
that I could have helped me for the first 3 months. So once I got into the book, um, really got into it, like, okay, what does this need to be? What does this need to look like? I actually every single morning I cried. See, you guys are going to get me into this crying, but I cried. And I usually am a really strong person, but I'm learning that the strong people actually are maybe the weakest because, my strong personality,
I was
it's not,
gonna, I was
I
gonna
usually have a
say I'm
strong
the
personality and I
same.
just keep crying these days. So for the first 3 months, now remember, it took me 14 months to write this book and it took thousands of hours. So the first 3 months of me crying every morning to just kind of go through, think of these families, where are they at now? Some of them I haven't seen in 20 years.
Mhm.
They're the first for the ones from my beginning of my career. So, like I said, 14 months, thousands of hours. But after that crying up is the crying for 3 months, it was like at the end, it was like a clarity kind of came through. And then
Hmm.
it was like this, I was just fueled every morning just to get up and write. It was like the crying was like a catalyst that,
Hmm.
fueled me every day to help families make sure that these mistakes and these complications just don't happen,
Yeah.
during the, birth of their baby. But the very last acknowledgement in the book is to the families. And I tell them in the book, that I prayed for them and that, they did that a big impact on me. And that I'm hoping that, us maybe learning from their stories will at least, help other families, that's the last part of the acknowledgement. But yeah, definitely the writing the book. And then um, it was just the biggest therapy for me to kind of come full circle with,
Okay.
with what I do, because it is hard. I mean, you're talking to families who lost a baby because of a preventable mistake. Human
Right.
error took a
Right.
baby. that is hard. That's pain. It's already painful enough to lose a baby or a
Yeah.
child. But when it's something that's human error, it's very
Mhm.
it's a pain I can never explain in words.
Wow.
That I've witnessed. I haven't experienced it, but from witnessing it for the 20 years, it's hard.
Yeah. So writing as therapy, again, something I know a lot about.
Yeah.
Writing is certainly a form of therapy for me. So I could understand how just, doing that was helpful. It's a cause for so much reflection and what's going on with yourself, and even allowing you to analyze what's going on with other people around you that might be affected. So tell us about a specific situation. I know you can't go into great detail because of your profession and not being able to, go too far into a case. Um, but what is one of the stories? You told us about your niece, but what's one of the stories, or even a combination of stories, something you've seen over and over again is so common and it breaks your heart, um, that really, really touched you and moved you. And maybe most of us in society don't even know that that's a thing. And people are going through these situations and we're just not privy to it.
Right. So there was one case that was very difficult for me. And I actually do mention it in chapter one. But it's very vague because it is the lesson on epidurals.
Mhm.
And most moms do get epidurals, but got to realize they come with risks.
Mhm.
And in one of the cases, unfortunately, mom they received an epidural and during the procedure passed away. Um, the hard part of that I still struggle with today, and I know there's nothing I can do about it, is to this day the family does not know how mom passed away. It's one of the hardest parts of my job,
Mhm.
is the confidentiality associated with being an attorney for the hospital and the doctors and the nurses. I can't I can't give this family, to this day, the closure that they need. So I
Oh, it was
mentioned
the
that very
epidural.
vaguely.
Mhm.
Yeah, you see them struggle and they want answers
Mhm.
and you can't give it to them. It's hard. And that was
Are
so
you able to share with us what about the epidural went wrong?
I can't.
Okay.
However, I say so it's lesson one. So I mention it, but I wrote an entire chapter on how to have a safe epidural experience
Okay.
based upon that very sad case. So
Okay.
I basically do not say any more than that in the book. I say, listen, a very bad experience. I explain, you know, how I haven't been able to say anything. I even wrote in the book, I'm like, I would love to take newspaper clippings
Mhm.
and glue it to a piece of paper and send it to the family anonymously, but that's not an option. I cannot do that. But what
Mhm.
I could do was write, that chapter in my book about epidurals to make sure it never happens again.
Okay, beautiful. Well, thank you for that. In June of 2023, you wrote the book, A Parent's Guide to Safer Childbirth, and it was published. What do you hope to achieve by putting this book into the world? Again, I know you've touched on some of that, but do you have a big why or big sense of purpose that maybe you haven't told us about?
Yeah, I mean the main part is just preventing these mistakes and complications. But, again, as we talked about too, I mean, as a childbirth attorney, I prepare my family differently than, someone else is going to prepare. But now I literally have taken all of my knowledge and understanding to the best I can over thousands of hours, and months and months on end to take what I know in a non-scary format that is simple, very, very direct. Because that's the kind of person I am. I give you exactly what you need to know.
Okay.
So it's hopefully I'm going to change the way that families prepare for childbirth.
Okay.
That would be my number one thing. If they can all have a different understanding of what they need to know to make sure they have a healthy baby,
Yeah.
that's definitely, that's it. Yeah, right
Okay.
there.
That's a perfect kind of tagline, if you will. I'm going to change the way families prepare for childbirth. That's significant. Okay, wonderful. So, without spoiling the book, what's a course of action that you would say? You found out you're pregnant, the family knows you're pregnant, do this right away.
Right. So I think it's very important, family, but you're right. Mom's pregnant. Oh my goodness. First thing that pops in your head, nursery. Where are we going to put the nursery? What color are we
Absolutely.
going to decorate it? What's the crib going to look like? Oh my
100%.
goodness. What stroller am I going to get? Oh my, the car seats. Let's research my
That's
car
where my
seats.
mind goes.
Yeah, right there, right? And the cute clothes. Oh, it's a girl. There's gonna be so many
Yes.
cute little dresses. I'm so excited. But it's, it's more than that. It's actually getting ready for the big day to make sure baby gets here safely. So all of the other stuff that you've planned your entire pregnancy, you can enjoy. But so all of the lessons from the childbirth cases are listed in chapter 1. And then each lesson then is a subsequent chapter. So chapter 1 gives you all the different lessons. And literally it's a guide from lesson number 1. We need to prepare for childbirth. And that's because that's a lesson mainly from the families. Because I think, we're all guilty of this. Bad things only happen to other people.
Mm-hmm.
So no. So the families in these cases always know more about childbirth than before, but it's because they had to learn, because they're like, what happened to my baby?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't my baby come home? And what they know so much when I end up talking to them years later, but all that information, if they would have had it at the beginning, maybe it would have been a different outcome. Because you
Right.
got to remember, moms are the decision maker. No
Yeah.
one's doing a C-section. No one's starting any drugs like Pitocin. No one's doing anything without mom saying, okay. So
Yeah.
chapter 1 really guides you. Like for instance, your delivery team, they're responsible for bringing your baby safely into this world. You better trust them. You better like them. And by the way, they're usually your team are like the people who are scheduled to work that day. So,
This book,
yeah.
this book will help us even better understand what their roles are.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
Yes,
good.
100%.
Because we might know we have this team, but we may not know exactly what this team is supposed to be doing for us or looking out specifically for us.
Mhm.
But I also want to, you say a phrase, preventable mistakes. Give us an idea of where you're going with that.
Right. So chapter,
Mm-hmm.
yes. So that's huge. It's part of the reason I was able to write the book, because there are reoccurring issues and facts in these cases. And every single parent must be aware of what they are, so that will help them make better decisions, or just help make sure they can work with their delivery team, to work together to bring, baby into the world safely. So chapter 11 of my book, talks about these top 10 most common facts in a baby case. Number 1 most common fact in a baby case is a drug called Pitocin. Pitocin is a drug that makes mom's uterus contract, and basically it induces labor. So have you ever heard the words induction of labor?
Yeah.
They do this by a drug called Pitocin.
Okay.
Most cases involve this drug. So I've seen the Pitocin inductions gone wrong for over 20 years. So I wrote a chapter on how to have a safe Pitocin induction based upon the mistakes and complications that I've seen over the years. Another very common problem, the hospital, the labor and delivery units are busy. They're very busy because remember, babies come when babies want to come. They can overtake a unit quick. So the delivery teams are running hard and they're thin. So in the book, I tell a story, a very sad story, again, and very in general, but mom goes in to have her baby. There were some concerns about the baby, but they were all, ultimately, they were reassured enough to leave mom. And so they left for a period of time, and the baby's heart rate, keep in mind, baby's inside mom. So it's harder to assess how baby is doing, right? Like mom, you can look at mom, you're like, oh my goodness, you don't look good. What's wrong? Mom then communicates, diagnosis, great. Baby's different. So a lot of time, well, the biggest indicator of how baby's doing is their heart rate. And then I go over that in my book. It's very important. I can look at a baby's heart rate and I can tell you if that baby is a rock star or if that baby is struggling. That's something parents who are rolling up into labor and delivery need to know. Because in that sad case, what happened is there were concerns about the baby's heart rate. And the doctors were reassured, the very busy doctors at that. And when they left, the baby's heart rate stopped graphing. And so at that point, you don't know how baby's doing. But the family at that point didn't understand the importance of that. And they just didn't know. So when the delivery team finally returned, they tried to get the baby's heart rate back. And there was no heart rate. And they brought in the ultrasound only to learn that the baby had passed away on the labor and delivery unit. So parents, you need to know the importance of the baby's heart rate. I had an expert testify, it's the only way that baby can talk to the doctor is through their heart rate. That means if you know things like I know, like about the heart rate, it's like your baby can talk to you, or they can talk to dad. If you're that enter that different state of mind of labor and delivery, trying to give birth to a child, I get it. But, so it's important. So, because if that delivery team would have known that baby was in big trouble, then they would have gotten the baby out. That would have been the priority patient. But they were running hard and they just didn't realize it at the time. So, so it's like that. And another this is an interesting one I ended up putting together kind of towards the end. All of the complications and mistakes occur after mom's water breaks. So baby's in a nice comfy environment for 9 months, surrounded by fluid, everything's hunky-dory, fluid comes out. It changes the baby's environment. Sometimes it can make, baby more vulnerable to a problem. So keep that in mind. It's important because
that's the most major time to watch.
Yeah, right after the water breaks, you eyes on baby and eyes on you. You want that delivery team paying close attention. You want to be engaged. You want to be speaking their language. And I get it that you're trying to give birth and that's your different state of mind. In my book, I'm like, listen, we all need a baby advocate. So I go over what is a baby advocate. That's kind of like your second eyes on baby. Since your delivery team can't be sitting there, watching you 24/7, especially, if the unit's busy. But yeah, like after your water breaks. So the important part of that, every problem or issue I bring up in the book, I solve. So if the doctor, well, I won't say solve it, but I give you help guide you what to do next. So if a doctor is like, hey, I would like to break your water, you don't say, okay, no, you say, or you ask, is there a medical reason you want to break my water, or do you want to be home for dinner? Like which one? Break the water, it's going to jumpstart labor, right? So I know of doctors who like to come in at 7 a.m., check on patients, break that water if it's possible, and they're usually home for dinner. So which one? Because once you break that water, again, baby is in a more vulnerable state. You need everyone needs to pay closer attention to baby after that water breaks.
So if they want to break your water, it's like, are you going to be right here on the job, making sure this is going safely, basically?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to your team. And then, like, okay, I know now from reading Gina Mundy's book that this is where babies can get into trouble and mistakes and complications can occur. So what are we going to change if you're going to break my water? Or is there a reason why? Can we just keep my water intact and let labor break it itself?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So is it something even where people would just say, let's just wait and let it break naturally?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if your doctor is like, recommends breaking your water, but there's maybe there's a medical reason. Because I'll tell you, like on Pitocin, I don't like, okay, Pitocin scares a baby lawyer like me. Doctors are fine with it. I do know from talking to a lot of doctors, because I've always hated Pitocin. So I'm like, can we just do something else besides Pitocin? So if you do need, for instance, an induction, some doctors, instead of increasing the Pitocin too much, will actually try to break your water to help jumpstart labor. So then you have breaking water, a little bit of Pitocin. Let's see if that works. So it's a little bit of unnatural and natural together. I mean, maybe that's why. And that's something you and your doctor, every patient's different, would need to talk about. But if it's just doctor who wants to come in and break water and,
You
think it's a
don't know.
soccer game,
Right.
literally my sister, that's what happened to her. Broke her water. And the doctor was honest. Doctor's like, I got a soccer game, I'm like, oh, wow. I don't know how. And at that point, hopefully after 9 months, you find a doctor who won't tell you that, but.
Wow. Boy, and you know what? You're just giving us a few little nuggets. So I can just imagine how much more information the audience is going to be able to delve into. I've been able to peruse it a bit and get some of the information that helped me even come up with our questions today. But it's just packed with information that's need to know before you get pregnant and while you're pregnant.
Yes.
All the way
And
up.
I'll tell you too, this is not just expecting moms. You know who the biggest readers are? I don't know if the biggest readers, but they love to leave me reviews and notes. Grandmas, expecting grandmas. And you know what? Think about it. It makes sense. I wrote this book. Technically, it all came because I was writing it to my kids, so my grandkids would be healthy.
I see.
So yes, it's like, so it's
It
just, it's funny.
resonates
So
with
much feedback from grandmas. And I'm like, at first I was thrown off, and then I'm like, duh, I wrote
That's
the
beautiful.
book as a grandma, like, a one-day grandma. So I was like, that makes sense.
So it's a great book club book for mature women's groups.
There you go.
All right. So you've already told us, but I ask all my guests this question. Let's be a bridge for the audience. And although you shared a lot of wonderful things already, and people are going to be able to get so much more in your book, what final gem, if people just, I don't know, suddenly have amnesia and they forget the majority of this wonderful conversation, like it's hard for me to believe that could ever happen, but let's just say it did. What's the one gem you're like, people just don't forget this one for sure?
That moment after birth when you hold your baby or your grandbaby for the very first time. It's that powerful moment when you get to touch and you get to look at them. And it's life-changing because you never ever stop being a parent. Whether you might turn into your child's best friend or whatnot, you'll still guide them through life. Today, my parents still continue to guide me.
Yeah.
But
same.
I know, right? And it's a moment that you want to last forever and to be the start of your life and to be the start of something great. So just always going to that moment and just remembering that just getting ready for that moment is so important, because in many of these cases, these families were only one decision away or sometimes just mere minutes from a healthy baby. Wow. So just understanding the need to be ready for that big day and to make decisions and to know what to do will help you enjoy that powerful moment, no matter, or if you're a family friend who's just, just because you may not be blood related. It's like, I have many of those. I consider, people to be family. So, it's family, grandparents, expecting parents. Just make sure you're ready for that moment.
That is so beautiful. Your book is helping everyone get ready for that moment. But your gem, your nugget that you're leaving us with is relish the moment. Once you do get there, you read Gina's book, you're watching all these things, you have the safe delivery, and then you have that moment when they're first put in your arms. Cherish it,
Yeah.
treasure it, relish it.
No, it's the beginning of
Wonderful.
something great.
I love that. Okay. So, this is the time in my show when I ask you to go ahead and share with my audience whatever you'd like them to know about how to get in touch with you, have you as a speaker, get a hold of your book. We're going to put that in our show notes, but you can also share it verbally now.
Thank you. So the best way is ginamundy.com. GINAMUNDY.com. So chapter 1, that super important chapter that we talked about, that is on my website for free. You literally can download it and send it out. It is the lessons everybody needs to know. And then I don't know how long it'll be up there, but I threw Baby Advocate up there, chapter 7. Because it is an important chapter. But I was in a podcast and I'm like, it's so important. I'll just put that on the website for a while. So that is also up there right now. And then I have also started a blog because, as I've gone through and I get on a podcast or I'm reading my book and I'm like, oh, I should have included that in the book. Then I do my blog, right? So it's like the
Okay.
supplement. So I've been doing this blog. And of course, just like the book, I'm like, oh, I got this idea and I got this. So I'm way too many blogs. I don't even know what to do with. So it's like a continuation. And obviously the blogs are free. So if you just even want to log on or not log on, but just go to ginamundy.com and just check out the blogs. And then there's a button that'll take you right to Amazon, and that's where my book is right now for sale. Or you could go to Amazon and then put my name in the search bar. However, I will warn you, the other pregnancy books are onto me. So if you put Gina Mundy in the search bar, sometimes you have to scroll down to get to my book because they're paying now to be above me. So sometimes, yeah, it depends. Later in the day, it doesn't seem to happen as much as first thing, because usually you have a marketing budget in these books. And I'm like, really? Leave my book alone. So if that happens, just scroll down, or you can also just put in the search bar a parent's guide to a safer childbirth, and that brings it up too.
Wonderful. And you know what? I really enjoy this conversation. And I say it that way because it's a tough conversation. It's talking a little bit about sad things that have happened, but because the conversation is balanced with your experience and expertise and giving some nuggets to the audience, it's made it enjoyable because I've learned through this very conversation.
Thank you.
And it was fun because we had some things that we resonated with, both of us, and it was funny just about life and how we relate to parents or things like that. I really, really appreciate you. Your person comes across, your heart comes across, and it's my prayer that as you endeavor to get this book out there to help others, that you're blessed back because of it. And thanks so much for being a guest on my show.
Thank you, Pamela. I appreciate you.
Of course.